Lighting up the skies, here's your look at the NECA Toys Godzilla King of the Monsters. This is Rodan. Following the global success of Godzilla and Kong Skull Island comes the next chapter in Warner Bros. Pictures and Legendary Pictures' cinematic monsterverse, an epic action-adventure that pits Godzilla against some of the most popular monsters in pop culture history. The new story follows the heroic efforts of the cryptozoological agency Monarch as its members face off against a battery of god-sized monsters, including the mighty Godzilla, who collides with Mothra, Rodan, and his ultimate nemesis, the three-headed King Ghidorah. When these ancient super species, thought to be mere myths, rise again, they all vie for supremacy, leaving humanity's very existence hanging in the balance. It seems like ages since the last time I had a look at a Godzilla figure. Chalk it up to the fact that NECA Toys have been releasing so many cool toys and figures as of late. I sort of got sidetracked with that. Didn't spend nearly enough time going back to the Godzilla stuff, but we're going to resume it where we left off. One thing I'm going to do here, as I don't normally do, and no, it's not measuring off the figure. I do that all the time, you silly. But one thing I'm going to do is actually include the display stand for displaying Rodan, for giving you the total height. Very likely, very unlikely, would you be displaying Rodan just on its own, unless you maybe hang it from a string or try to perch it on the edge of a shelf. Most likely, you're probably going to be displaying it with the display stand here included. So that's why I'm including that as part of its height. The figure stands almost 8 inches. Now again, that's from here to the top of its head. And that, in centimeters, my friends and members of the mob, looks to be about 20 centimeters. Yes, in fact, 20 centimeters in height. Carefully, we're going to take Rodan and just put it to the side, because the one thing I want to look at first is the display stand. The display stand, honestly speaking, is almost as impressive as Rodan himself. Now, it doesn't come out of the packaging like this. What you're getting is the base inside the rock facing here. You've got the explosion cloud of fire and debris, and then you've got that clear post that attaches to, well, the undercarriage of Rodan. I'm going to take this off first, sort of dismantle it, give you what it looked like when you would have gotten this immediately out of packaging. Just take this off like that, and here is what the base looks like. Very intricate, detailed base. You'll see that there is a half circle. We'll talk about that in a second. It's been done in a very light gray, and there's a few little areas here that are also done in the dark black coloring there. But overall, just a neat looking miniature version of the base. Even the rock facing has some really nice mixtures of dark and lighter brown. Just again, a really neat looking display piece. That's what the underside looks like. Nothing a whole lot happening here, just again the under mold of again this really neat looking display base. So we're going to go ahead and take the cloud of smoke, which you can tell just by the coloring of it, has just a toxic level of smoke, fire, and whatever else that would have culminated in this explosion emitted, originating, I should say, from the center there of the display. It's done in a translucent yellow plastic, but you would see that it's not just that. There's a whole lot of extra stuff happening up here. NECA Toys have added some additional, it just looks like lava that's cooling, some darker colors of almost like a very rusted dark red mixed in with lighter shades of red. There's some orange and yellows in there as well. It's just a really neat looking showcase for what will be the monster flying above it. It does attach, like I said, to a half circle. I'm curious as to why they used a half circle and not simply just a full circle. It doesn't have to tell you specifically that it has to face one way, say, versus the other way. But the way that they've designed it, they've got a half circle connecting the open socket hole to the plug right here. And we'll just line those up, making sure, of course, they go the right way. And I'm just going to wiggle those in. I never really feel like this is sitting as secure as I would want. I don't know if it's just the way it's butting up against everything around it. I mean, there's enough clearance around where that opening is, but I just never feel like this sits as secure as I would want. Then you take the clear post, and basically what it is kind of looks like a deer head, but you got an open kind of U shape here, and there's these little tabs on either side, and then there's this back resting support. It doesn't really matter which way you attach it because it's just an open circular socket and a circular peg, so it just fits quite easily in place. I say quite easily. I don't know how easy it is in the sense that once you do have it in place, sure, it sits there, but I feel like when you put Rodan on there, if you're moving it just slightly, it rocks, and it doesn't feel as secure as I would want it. I guess they could make it a little bit lower, but I think the connector would be about the same for it. Now, when you are taking Rodan, when you attach him, this is one thing I like that NECA Toys did do. They didn't put a hole. Most companies would have actually just put a hole right there, simply called it a day, and put a peg right there, and it would have just attached to the belly section of Rodan. They didn't do that. Instead, what it is if I hold up the stand, again, you've got that little U shape. The U shape fits around the stomach section of Rodan, and that little support strut clips kind of in between his legs. I don't know if you can see it. Right here, it looks like there's a bit of an additional ledge right on either side. It's on that side, and it's on that side right there, right where my finger is. That U shape on that clamp sort of fits around, I don't know if you would call it, it's not quite its rib cage, but it fits just right around those little groove slots. And it's more than enough to hold Rodan in place. And I like that. I like because even though you're likely going to be displaying Rodan like this, I know I certainly will be displaying Rodan like this, you can at least take him off very easily, and you don't have this obnoxious hole in his stomach. Again, I feel like a lot of companies would just simply put a hole right there and say, you know what, that's enough. It's going to hold Rodan in place. But NECA factors in the fact that if you ever wanted to take Rodan off and display him, maybe even on a string, or like I said, if you have him perched on something, if you can kind of get him on the edge of a shelf, you're not going to be seeing this big noticeable hole on that. And I like that. Some smart thinking on their part. So we're going to move the base just out of the way for the time being. I guess some size comparisons if you wanted to see some size comparisons. There's Godzilla from the King of the Monsters, also from NECA Toys. And here is Rodan. Size-wise, I guess they're about accurate. I almost felt as if Rodan was a little bit bigger, but I guess that is... I mean, when you think of the size of Godzilla as the figure, I guess that's about the size appropriately for Rodan. And then looking at the two really up close, there's the two side by side. Much more darker colors used for Rodan than the lighter palettes that they used for Godzilla. But again, really nice comparison between the two. We still have to look at Mothra. I actually have Mothra. I just never got around to reviewing him. So she is going to be coming up in an upcoming review. So stay tuned for that. And I think as of right now, we don't have King Ghidorah yet. But hopefully that's going to be in a process of coming out soon from NECA Toys also as well. Let's move Godzilla just out of the way, because we've already looked at Godzilla. As for Rodan, the one thing that my takeaway for this figure is the exquisite amount of sculpting and paint to this. One end, it kind of looks like a charred tree. Specifically, when you're looking at this side, it kind of looks like a burnt trunk of a tree, or the bark of the tree that's been charred. It looks also like cooling lava, where you've got these darker tones, and then there's these areas that are cracked and exposed, exposing like the red on the interior. It actually kind of also looks like, being a connoisseur of it myself, it looks like beef jerky. Kind of looks a little bit like beef jerky. On both sides, actually, and there's the spiced pepper flakes, but I digress. Mothra's got some, like I said, some exquisite coloring, and I like that they actually kept the coloring of the under plastic still in there, so it does look like visible cracks to its skin, to its flesh. Having a look at its head sculpt is just phenomenal. Loving the head portrait that they've given him. Very small, beady eyes. You can almost even barely make out the eyes, but they are there. And they've also even painted in the pupils. Now put that in perspective of how small this is, and the fact that you're able to even make out pupils is quite a wondrous feat. If you prefer something a little bit different, however, the folks over at NECA also include an open mouth. Pretty much the same portrait, but just with an open mouth. I wondered actually why they didn't simply just hinge the mouth, but then I realized that there would be a noticeable peg on either side, and the fact that the mouth is as small as it is probably would also run the risk that that joint, that mouth, would become very loose in a very short amount of time. So instead, what they ended up doing was they spent a little extra dollars to create a secondary mold where you've actually got the mouth open. It's a good opportunity as well to see the difference between the two. Like the top part of the head isn't that much different at all. It's really only just the mouth that on the bottom that is the change. Speaking of changing, if you just grab the torso, just kind of like this, and hold the neck, get a good grip of it, and just wiggle the head off. Comes off quite easily, actually. They didn't use a ball joint. I'm glad that they didn't. They used a very small cylinder socket, and you just want to wiggle the head back into place like so. It's a very easy to change head. You don't have to worry about, like I said, forcing against a larger socket ball joint. And there you have the open mouth. This is probably going to be, display-wise, what I'm going to gravitate, I think, a little bit more towards, because as much as I like the closed mouth, boy oh boy, that open mouth looks exquisite. You also see like the interior of the mouth has a different type of paint than the rest of the body, where most of the body is kind of a semi-coated, semi-sheened paint. The mouth actually has a full, shiny, almost wet-like interior, I suppose. It kind of looks actually like oil when you look at it. The tongue just reflects off the light rather nicely. Even like the side sections of its mouth does have a little bit, like I said, of the sheen. The light just does a great job of bouncing off of that. As for the rest of the body, Rodan actually being a smaller scaled figure, of course, we've gotten ourselves the Jazzwares, I think it was, or is the Jack Specific? I think it was the Jack Specific Godzilla pieces. And those were good for what they were, but I think when it comes to detailing, you can't really beat the stuff that NECA is producing. Now, there's articulation on this guy. We'll flip him around on the other side there. But it is minimal, and it's pretty much what you would expect Rodan to have for articulation. I guess we can kind of run through that right now. The head rotates all the way around, just, well, you saw how it attached in place. It just rotates along that cylinder, moves up and down, and you can also rock the head back and forth slightly. The neck, which I was very surprised to find had articulation, you can rotate the head back and forth, hinge it up and down, and you can also rock that back and forth. Legs hinge back and forth. It doesn't look like they're... It looks like they might be on a ball joint, but you don't get as much generous movement from them as, say, you would with the neck section. The arms hinge back and forth, so you can fold the arms inward, or you can fan them out to their full glory. They do seem that you can rotate the arms back a little bit and forward a little bit, but there's not a lot of clearance to do much more than what I'm doing right now. And then the other cool thing that is on this Rodan is that the wings actually hinge outward. I had one problem, not this arm here, but this arm right here is a little on the loose side, and I have noticed the way that I swung the wing out, there's a couple of times that the peg has come loose and the wing has just basically fallen off. It's simply just a case of popping that back into place. But unfortunately, the one wing is a little on the loose side for me. I could pry it out just a little bit more, but it doesn't seem as tight as this one right here. What I might end up doing is taking the wing off and maybe adding like a little bit of nail polish or something like that. See if I can kind of stiffen up that joint a little bit more than what it is. As you can see, it does pop off. Moving the wing does pop off back and forth. I don't know if I guess I could, like I said, add a little bit of nail polish right there. And when you are attaching the wing back in place, you almost feel like you want to attach it this way, but you want to overlap the wing on the interior, and then you attach it back into that peg point. It's a shame, like I said, that one side is giving me problems the way it is. This other arm, I don't have any problems with whatsoever. And then when it comes to displaying Rodan, once again, we just slide in the display stand and just line up everything. There we go. And you've got yourself quite the stellar looking display. I would imagine for the flight characters, Again, having not looked at Mothra just yet, but I'm wondering if King Ghidorah is probably going to have something similar to this, a display stand in which you can actually have the creature flying above. And actually, it works out quite well that you have Rodan in a fully flight mode display option, because when you do display it with Godzilla, you certainly don't want to just have Rodan sitting on a shelf. You want to have it in all its flying glory. And I think displaying it like this, giving it the stand that NECA did, really does give you a quite impressive looking display once you have Godzilla and the various different monsters from King of the Monsters. Figures based on characters that fly sure may look good in packaging, but the problem always comes when you get them home and out of their packaging. What do you do with them? Where do you display them? You can lay them flat on a shelf. That's pretty boring, and most collectors may resort to fishing line to display them from their ceilings, and that works fine and good, but it's nice to have a contained diorama. NECA Toys, of course, considered that with their flying rendition of Rodan, at least incorporating a rather impressive-looking display stand that you can have Rodan flying above. Unfortunately, though, and one of the shortcomings to the figure is that I find the clear post doesn't sit securely enough into the smoke cloud. If only the hole was a little bit deeper, I feel the post would sit a little bit further down, and as a result, you could probably even see it in here in final looks. That post is swaying a little bit off to the side. I'll see if I can fix that in a moment. Rodan is a nice looking specimen, a little bit smaller than, of course, Godzilla, so it's nice that they did spend some extra budget by producing a little bit of extra plastic that could go along with the figure, in vein of the display stand base, and like I said, that explosion cloud kind of beefs up this figure a little bit, because without that, you would feel that the figure would be a little lesser and not maybe deserving of the price that you may have spent for Godzilla to spend here on Rodan. Rodan's got some exquisite details, like a charred remain of a past gone by. He kind of looks like a cooling lava, and it looks a little bit like beef jerky as well. I like the sculpt and I like the interchangeable head option. I'm just a little iffy when it comes to that post. I wish it could sit a little bit more securely in place, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. So sorry, by the way, that it took a little bit longer to get around to the look of Rodan. As it stands right now, I still have to have a look at the Mothra, and rest assured, the review of Mothra will be coming up soon as well. If you managed to pick up the new NECA Toys Godzilla, or relatively new Godzilla King of the Monsters Rodan, let me know down below in the comments section what you think of this creature, or based on this review, and this review alone. Also, if you're new to this channel, or say a long-time viewer, maybe you never got around to it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, swing next door, and maybe avoid all the chaos that's going on in the clouds, and hit that bell notification, so that when future videos, maybe including Rodan's air nemesis, I don't know, Mothra, when the Mothra review will be coming up, or any other of the NECA reviews will be coming up, you'll never miss out. Stay tuned, guys. Like I said, we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff coming your way. Not only just Godzilla, but I can tell you, just between you and me, don't tell anybody, just between you and me. Just between you and me, there's a whole bunch of NECA reviews coming soon to this channel, so stay tuned for it. I'm just telling you, don't tell anybody else. No, shh. Don't tell anybody else. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do, and I'll see you guys next time.